Hello guys. Okay, so today we only have a very short tutorial about financial accounting topic that we have covered in the previous tutorials. Okay, so we already discussed 5 topics on financial accounting. Okay, so we have discussed the non-current asset. Okay, and then partnerships, and then cash flow statement, shareholders equity, and financial statement analysis. Okay, so basically this tutorial is to make sure that you have a proper understanding of those topics, and in case you have something that you want to clarify, we can discuss that we can discuss again the topics. And we also have some questions to revise, so we can do the question as practice, okay, to improve your understanding. Okay, so anytime you feel you want to clarify something, just type your question at the chat box, or you can interrupt me. Okay, you can go back to the question. Okay, the first one is the non-current asset. So as we have discussed, at least we have 4 cycles in the non-current asset. Okay, so we start with the acquisitions, and then when the company start using the asset, they need to spend some budget on the maintenance or betterment. Okay, and we also have some method to expand the asset. Okay, and lastly, we have disposal of the non-current asset. Okay, so I think in the acquisition stage, what the most critical part is to properly identify which costs should be included as part of the acquisition cost. Okay, so the acquisition cost, basically all costs directly related to the acquisition should be included as part of the acquisition cost. So the purchase price, the delivery cost, installation cost, some training costs, or some compulsory insurance. Okay, so we should include the purchase. Okay, so delivery and other directly related costs to this acquisition. Okay, I think the most tricky cost that we should carefully identify is the insurance. Okay, because some insurance are compulsory and related to this acquisition, but some other insurance is not compulsory. It only covers the usage of the asset. Okay, so for insurance that directly related to the acquisition, we should include it as a part of the acquisition cost. But for some insurance which is not directly related to the acquisition, we should exclude the insurance from the acquisition cost, and we record this insurance separately in the journal entry. Okay, so the journal entry is simple. So we will have the asset in the debit. Okay, so we have a building or vehicle or machine in the debit, and then we have cash in the credit. Okay, so the next one is the maintenance. Okay, so as we have discussed, we have 2 classification for maintenance expense. So if the maintenance is minor, okay, we should include the maintenance as a revenue expenditure. So for example, if a company replacing one spare part of their machine, and we cannot expect that after this maintenance, the economic life of this machine will be extended, so we should include this maintenance as a revenue expenditure. Okay, so we will have maintenance expense in the debit, and then cash in the credit side. Okay, so these groups will affect the profit and loss. Okay, and the other one, if the maintenance expense is major, so the company is replacing more than half of a machine's spare parts. Okay, so after this maintenance, we can expect that the useful life or the economic life of this machine will be extended. Okay, we should include this maintenance as a capex or capital expenditure. Okay, for major maintenance. Okay, so we will have the asset in the debit, so machine, buildings, or vehicle in the debit, and then cash in the credit. So this kind of maintenance will affect the balance sheet, the balance of asset in the balance sheet. Okay, that's the second stage, and the next one is this expensing. So one of the main characteristic of a non-current asset is that this type of asset have more than one accounting years of useful life. So the company needs to systematically allocate the cost throughout the economic life. Okay, so typically we use the depreciation to allocate the useful life of this, the cost of this asset throughout the useful lives in order to maintain the matching principles. Okay, matching with cost and revenue. Okay, so the company can use various method of depreciation. So they can use straight-line method or reducing balance method or unit of production and any other method. Okay, another way of expensing this asset is impairment. Okay, so in impairment, if the book value or the carrying value of the asset is somehow lower compared to the recoverable value of this asset, then the company need to impair this asset. They need to record an impairment. So they will record a loss on impairment on the debit side and then the asset in the credit side. Okay, so this is in the past we also have amortization for intangible asset, but the new accounting standard already removed that or revoked that concept. So now we only have impairment for intangible asset. Okay, and lastly we have a disposal. So in the disposal of a non-current asset, first we need to update the book value of this asset up to the date of this disposal. Okay, so we need to calculate the book value of the asset up to the point of disposal. Okay, and then we need to identify whether we have a gain or loss from this transaction. Okay, so gain or loss basically the selling price or disposal price. So selling price of this asset minus the book value up to the point of sale. Okay, so selling price minus the book value. Okay, so again, it's basically an income, so it should be in the credit side, and loss is an expense, so it should be recorded in debit side. Okay, so this is basically the basic concept of accounting for non-current asset. And now let's discuss our first question. Okay, so we have Matthew. He built a new building for storing the supplies of his business. Okay, so the builder charged 250,000. So this is basically the construction cost. And then the electrician cost is 10,000. And a painter cost 5,000. And a compulsory fire safety inspection costs 1,000. Okay, and Matthew also purchased 12-month insurance for 10,000, which covers the value of the building in case of destruction. Okay, so for number one, we need to identify which costs that should be included in the acquisition cost of this building. Okay, so first we have this construction cost. So construction is 250. Okay, and then electricity. So electricity is 10,000. And paint is 5,000. Okay, and lastly, this one, the inspection cost, because it's compulsory, so it should be included as part of the acquisition cost. So we have inspection cost for 1,000. Okay, so in total we have 260 plus 6,000, so 266,000. Okay, so this will be the total acquisition cost of this building. Okay, next we need to record this in the journal entry. So we will have building in the debit side and then cash credit side for 266,000. Okay, and we also need to record this insurance separately. So this insurance covers 12 months period. So we should record this as a prepaid insurance. So prepaid insurance in the debit side and then cash in the credit side. Okay, for 10,000. Okay, so this is the journal entry for number 1. Okay, for acquisition process. And number 2, Matthew calculated the building cost is 266,000, which is the same that we have calculated before. He estimates the building will last for 20 years. So this is the economic life of this building, and 50,000 of salvage value or residual value. So now we need to calculate the depreciation expense for years 1 to 3 using the reducing balance method, or 2 times of the start line rate. So we basically the start line rate is 1/20. Okay, 1/20 years. So we are going to double this rate. So multiply by 2. Okay, so I already prepared this table to make the calculations easier. So basically, this is the information that we need to calculate the depreciation. Okay, so the building cost is 266,000. Useful life is 20 years. Salvage value or residual value is 50,000. Okay, and then the rate is double. So double times the starting rate. So 2 times 1/20. Okay, for year number 1, so we just multiply this rate with the his acquisition cost. So 2 times 1/20 times 266,000. So we get this 26,600 as the year 1 depreciation expense. Okay, and then the accumulated depreciation should be equal because we don't have the previous year's depreciation. Okay, so the book value or the carrying value by the end of the first year will be this cost minus the accumulated depreciation. So we have 239,400. Okay, and then year 2 we use the same rate. Now we use the book value by the end of year 1. Okay, so 239,400 multiplied by 0.1. We got this 23,940, and we sum this with the previous year's depreciation. We got 50,540, and then we calculate the book value by the end of year 2, which is 266 minus this one. We got 215,460. Okay, and lastly, year 3, we use this book value of by the end of year 2, multiply by the rate, we got 21,546. Okay, when we add this with the previous year's depreciation, so we got accumulated depreciation of 72,86. Okay, and then the carrying amount or carrying value will be 266 minus this one. Then we got this 193,000 as the book value by the end of year 3. Okay, I hope you can follow this simple table. Okay, just to make the calculation easier. So the journal entry is quite simple. So we will have depreciation expense in the debit side. Okay, and then accumulated depreciation in the credit side. Okay, up to this small. Okay, now let's go back to the question. Now we go to number 3. Okay, on the last day of year 3, Matthew sells the building for 200,000. Okay, so record journal entry for the sale of the building. Okay, so we know that the selling price is 200,000. Okay, and now we need to calculate the book value. Okay, so the book value or the carrying value up to the end of year 3. Okay, so I think we already calculate this in the table. So this one, 193,914. Okay, so we deduct this from the selling price. So you can see that the selling price is slightly higher compared to the book value. It means that we have a gain from this transaction. Okay, the gain will be 6,086. Okay, so we need to record this transaction in a journal entry. So we will record first, we record cash because the company received cash from the sale. The cost will be 200,000. Okay, and then we need to remove the building because the company is disposing this building. So the building will be put in credit for the original cost, which is 266,000. Okay, and then we also need to remove the depreciation of this building. So we put accumulated depreciation in the debit. Okay, this up to end of year 3, which is this one, 7286. Okay, and lastly, we need to record the gain. Gain is an income, so should be put in the credit side. Okay, so the gain will be 6,086. Okay, so this is the journal entry for number 3. Okay, next is number 4. When using the reducing balance method of depreciation, what do you do if the formula estimates a depreciation expense that will take the accumulated depreciation balance higher than the depreciable amount? I think we have discussed this in the tutorial. So the most tricky part if we use the reducing balance method is calculating the depreciation expense for the last economic life or the last useful life of the asset. Okay, so the rule of thumb that the total accumulated depreciation of the asset should be equal with the depreciable value. Okay, so the depreciable value is the cost minus the residual value. Okay, so residual value okay, so the accumulated depreciation cannot exceed the depreciable value, which is the cost minus the residual value. Okay, so 1 year before the last economic life, we should check the balance of the accumulated depreciation. Okay, whether we have the balance which is close to the total depreciable value. Okay, so if we have the balance which is already close to the depreciable value, then if we use the formula, we may get a higher depreciation expense in total, okay, compared to the depreciable value. So instead of using the formula, if we have a balance of accumulated depreciation, which is close to the depreciable value. We just simply take the difference between accumulated depreciation up to the 1 year before the last economic life with the total depreciable value. So the difference between these two will be the depreciation expense of the last economic life of this asset. Okay, so we don't use the formula, but simply we take the difference between the accumulated depreciation 1 year before the last accounting year, useful life, and then compared to the depreciable value, which is the cost minus the residual value. Okay, okay, that's pretty much all. Any comment or question? Whoa. Any comment or question? No? Okay, so now let's continue to the next topic is the partnership. Okay, so in the partnership, we also have 4 stages. Okay, so the first one is the establishment, and then we have the distribution of profit if the partnership start making a profit or loss. And then we have investment from a new partner who want to join the partnerships, and withdrawal by the existing partners if they want to withdraw from the partnerships. And lastly, we have liquidation. Okay, so in the establishment, we need to identify each partner's contribution to the partnerships. Okay, so each partner will contribute their asset and liabilities to the partnerships. Okay, and then we need to individually identify what is their contribution. Okay, so they will bring their asset, okay, and liabilities to the partnerships. Okay, and the difference between these two, we will have the capital of each partner. Okay, and remember, we always use the market value in valuing the partner's contribution. Okay, so we can ignore the cost or the book value at the moment, but we only use the market value. Okay, so the journal entry is simple. So in the debit side, we will have all the assets. Just put all the assets in the debit side and put all liabilities in the credit side, and then the difference will be the capital of each partner. Okay, and then the second stage is the distribution of profit or loss. So first, we need to check how the partners want to distribute the profit or loss, what arrangement or what scheme that they want to use to distribute this profit or loss. Okay, so we need to check that in the partnership agreement. Okay, and then if the partnership agreement says nothing about this distribution of profit or loss, then we can assume that the partners want to distribute the profit equally among them, so equal distribution. Okay, regardless of their proportion of capital or any other contribution. Okay, journal entry is simple again. So we will have income summary or return earning in the debit side, and then capital of each partners in the credit side. Okay, in the case of profit, if the partnership is making a loss, we will have the reverse of the journal. So now we will have the capital of each partners in the debit side and income summary in the credit side. Okay, next is the investment and withdrawal. So for investment and withdrawal, we always compare two figures. The first one is the asset contributed by the new partner, so asset contribution. So if a new partner want to join the partnerships, he or she need to contribute something, right? He or she need to contribute some asset to the partnership. Okay, so we identify those assets, and then we compare this with the capital allocation. So percentage of capital allocation to this new partner. Okay, so if the asset contribution is bigger than the capital allocation, then we will have a bonus. For the old partners, the existing partners. Okay, but if the asset contribution is smaller than capital allocation, then we will have a bonus for the new partner. Okay, so we can identify whether we have bonus or loss by comparing these two figures. Okay, and then how we record this? So we simply record as the asset in the debit side. So asset contributed by the new partner, debit side, and then credit side will be the capital of each partner. Okay, and lastly we have liquidation. So in the liquidation we have 3 steps. So the first one, the partners will sell all the partnership's asset. Okay, so selling all asset for cash. Okay, so they will transform all the asset to cash, and then they will use this cash to repay the liabilities, the partnership liabilities. Okay, so if they have sufficient cash, so there won't be a problem. They can pay all the liabilities. But if the cash is insufficient, then the partners need to use their own personal cash to repay these liabilities. Okay, this is what we call as a unlimited liability. So the partners have unlimited liability in satisfying the partnership's loan or liabilities. And lastly, if they have remaining cash, they will distribute the cash to the partners. Okay, so this will be the last journal entry for this partnership. Okay, so initially we will record cash in the debit and then assets in the credit side. And then after that, the partners will use this cash to repay the liabilities. So we will record liabilities debit side and cash in the credit side. Okay, and lastly, they will distribute the cash. So we will record capital of each partners in debit side and then cash credit side. Okay. Okay, so now let's try to answer this question. Now we have Nabil and Tulaisi form a partnerships to offer consulting services in Sydney. So Nabil contribute 250,000 in cash, computer equipment with a market value of 50,000, and Tulaisi owns a building and he contribute the building for the market value of the building is this one, 450. Okay, so we only use this market value. Okay, so number one, so Nabil, let's identify the contribution of each partner. So Nabil contribute 250 in terms of cash 250, and then equipment. So equipment, we use the market value, which is 50,000. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much all. So Nabil's capital is 300,000. Okay. Now Tulaisi contribute a building. Okay, so the building market value is 450,000. Okay, this will be utilized capital. Okay, so we need to record this in the journal. So we just put all asset in the debit side. So cash, and then equipment, and then building. Okay, cash, equipment, building, debit side, and then capital of Nabil and capital of Tulaisi credit side. So cash is 250, equipment is 50, okay, building is 450. Okay, capital of Nabil will be 300,000, capital Tulaisi will be 450. So in total we have 750 of capital. Okay, this is number one. Number two, Nabil and Tulaisi make a profit of 250 in their first year of operation. The agreement states that 200,000, the first 200,000 will be distributed based on the proportion of the capital, and the remaining will be distributed equally between the partners. Okay, so I already prepared a table to make calculation easier. Okay, so first we need to calculate the capital, proportion of capital belong to each partners. Okay, so for Nabil contribute 300,000 of capital out of 750 of total capital. Okay, so this is pretty much 40%. Okay, and Tulaisi contribute 450,000 out of 750,000 total capital, which is 60%. Okay, so the first 200,000, which is this part, will be distributed 40% to Nabil, which is 80,000, and 60% to Tulaisi, which is 420,000. Okay, and the remaining profit, 250 minus 200 is 50,000, will be distributed equally to Nabil and Tulaisi. So each will get 25,000, equal distribution. Okay, so in total, Nabil will get 105,000 and Tulaisi 145,000. Okay, so this is journal entry. Income summary, debit side for 250, and then capital Nabil 105, capital Tulaisi 145,000. Okay. Next is number 3. Okay, at the start of year 2, Nabil and Tulaisi is getting too busy to keep up with the demand of their clients. The partners agreed to accept Terence. So Terence is the new partner. Terence paid 500,000 into the partnerships for 25% share of capital. Nabil and Tulaisi agree to split any capital bonus from the admission equally. So equal distribution of bonus or loss. So let's make the journal. So we can identify from the question that the asset contribution of Terence is 500,000. Okay, and then 25% of share of capital. Okay, so the capital allocation is 25%. Okay, from total capital. So 25% times 25% times total capital. So originally we have 750,000 of total capital, and then we have a profit from the first years of operation, 250,000, and lastly we have additional capital from Terence for 500,000. Okay, so this will be the total capital of this partnership. So in total we will have 750 times plus 750, so 1.5 million. Okay, so 25% times 1.5 million, that will be the capital allocation to Terence. Okay, so this will be 375,000. Okay, so if you compare these two, so asset contribution is 500, and then the capital allocation is 375. We can see that the asset contribution is slightly higher than the capital allocation. It means the old partners, Nabil and Tulaisi, is charging a premium to Terence. Okay, so there will be a bonus for Tulaisi and Nabil, okay, for 125,000. And they agree to distribute this bonus equally among them, so each will get half of it, so 62,500. Okay, so we need to record this in a journal entry. So the journal will be cash debit. So we record the cash contribution for 400,000. And then the capital of the new partners, which is Terence, TR, 375,000. Okay, and then capital of Nabil will be increased by 62,500 because of the bonus. And the capital of Tulaisi will also be increased by 62,500. Okay, so these two basically capture this bonus. Okay, so this is the answer for this question. Any comment or question on partnerships?
Should be okay.
Okay, so I hope this is easy for you. Okay, next is shareholders equity. Okay, so in shareholders equity, we also have at least 4 stages or issues on accounting. First, the share issuance. Okay, so in share issuance, we already discussed that the company have 2 options. They can use the direct sales method. Okay, so they sell the shares in one transaction. Okay, in one lump sum payment. This method is simple and straightforward, but unfortunately, the amount of cash that should be paid by the investors may be quite high. So the transaction may not be attractive for some investors. Okay, so that's why it's not really popular in real business practice. Okay, and the second method is the company could use the installment method. Okay, so they will split the share price into 3 components, which is the application, allotment, and call. Okay, and then they will issue the price, okay, separately for each component. Okay, so we will have, for installment method, we will have application fee. Okay, and then allotment fee and call. Okay, so these 3 will be the total price of this share. So we have to record 3 separate transactions for this process. So first we record the application. Basically, we will have cash trust debit side and then application credit side. Okay, so and then we will record allotment, which is the allotment debit, and then the ordinary capital in the credit side, and then call debit and ordinary capital in the credit side. So this, all of them are only temporary accounts. So by the end of the process, the balance will be 0 for all of these accounts, and we'll have the same balance whether we use the lump sum sales or direct sales or the installment sales method. Okay, and the second issue is the distribution of dividends. So when the company start making a profit and they want to distribute this profit to the shareholders, they will distribute dividends. Okay, so when they declare that they want to distribute dividend, they will record retained earnings, debit, and dividend payable in the credit side. Okay, and then when they decide to pay this dividend, they have two alternatives. They can use cash payment, so they will be cash dividend. Okay, and they also can pay this dividend in form of share to the investors. Okay, or share dividend. Okay, so they will record dividend payable in the debit side and cash in the credit side for cash dividend, and dividend payable debit and ordinary capital credit for share dividend. Okay, next we have share buyback. So sometimes company have excess cash and they believe that the price of their shares is in the market is somehow too low, so the price doesn't reflect the economic resources or the business prospect of the company. Okay, and they want to increase this price by buying back their own shares from the market. Okay, so unfortunately the investor will see this transaction as a bad signal, because if the company start buying back their own shares from the market, it means they don't have a profitable project to invest with. Okay, so the future prospect of this company may be not so promising, and the investor starts selling the shares. Okay, so the immediate effect of this share buyback will be increase in price and share price, but in the long run it could be decrease in price because the investor believe the future prospect of this company is not really good. Okay, so how we record this in the journal entry? So we will simply record ordinary capital in the debit side. Okay, and then cash credit side. Okay, and then we have a share split. In the share split, the company believes that the share price is too expensive or too high, which make their share less liquid in the market. Okay, now they want to make the share more cheaper by increasing the number of shares supplied to the market. Okay, so now they have more shares in the market by splitting the shares, so 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, something like that. And then they expect that the price will be lower. So after this share split. Okay, and with the lower price, the liquidity of the share will be improved and the share become more attractive for investors. Okay, and because the shares become more attractive, in the long run, we will see an increase in price. Okay, so the immediate effect of the share split will be a decrease in price because of this increase in supply, but in the long run, the effect will be increase in price. Okay, so how we record this transaction in the journal entry? Luckily, we don't have to record anything because this share split doesn't affect the balance of this ordinary capital in the balance sheet. Okay, so now let's discuss these questions. So we have a Cheung company. The company issued 10,000 shares for $30 per share. So the total price of the share is 30. And they divide this price into 3 components. So $12 on application, 10 on allotment, and 8 on call. Okay, and application are received in January, allotment made in mid-January. The money will be received on end of January, and the call was made on May. Okay, and the company discovered that 500 applicants did not pay the call money, so the company decided to withdraw the shares. So they take back the shares from the applicants and reissue the shares in a discounted price. So the new price is 24. So the original price is 30. So we can calculate the discount is 30 minus 24, which is 6. $6 per share. Okay. Okay, now we need to make the journal entry for this transaction. So let's start with the application. So in January 1st, the company will record cash trust in the debit side and then application credit side. Okay, so application is 12 times 10,000. Okay, so we have 120,000 on application. Okay, and in January 14, they allot the shares, so they will have allotment in the debit. So allotment is 10 per share, so this will be 100,000. Okay, and then the company need to remove the application, so they will record the applications in the debit side for 120,000. Okay, and credit side they will have ordinary capital. Okay, for 220,000. Okay, and now because the company already allot the shares to the allotment, they can transfer the cash balance from cash trust to cash, so they don't have restriction anymore from at the cash balance. So the cash, debit, and cash trust. Credit side for 120,000. Okay. Next, the company will receive this allotment money on January. So end of January, the company will receive cash, debit, and allotment credit. This one is 100,000. Okay, next is on May, the company issue call. Okay, so May 1st, they issue call, so they will record call, debit, and ordinary capital. Credit side, the call is 8 per share, so you should have 80,000 of call. Okay, but unfortunately, not all the applicants pay this call money. Also, in May 14, the company discovered that 500 applicants did not pay this call money. So they will only receive cash, not in full, but with some deduction. So cash, debit, and call credit. So initially we have 80,000 of call minus the 500 applicants did not pay the call money plus $8. Okay, this is basically 4,000. So 80 minus 4, we have 76,000. Okay. What next? Is they decide to withdraw these shares from the applicants because this applicant did not pay the call money. They take back the shares from them. Okay, so we have ordinary capital in the debit because the company take back the shares. Remember, we always use the full price if the company withdraw the shares or reissue the shares. So this one should be 30 times 10,000. Sorry, times 500. Okay, so full price 30 times 500. We will have 1,500. Oh no, 15,000. 1 more 0. Okay, and then we should remove some of this call. Okay, unpaid call. So the unpaid call should be removed. So we put this call in the credit side Okay, for 4,000, right? And the remaining balance, we use the temporary account called forfeited shares for 11,000. Okay, this is the journal entry to withdraw the shares from the applicant, which is failed to pay the call money. Next, the company will reissue the shares in a discounted price. So we will have cash because they reissue the cash. They issue the shares, they will receive cash. Cash in the new price. So this will be, new price is 24 times 500 shares. Okay, so this will be 12,000. Okay, and in the credit side, they will record ordinary capital because they're reissuing this share. Okay, to the new investor. Okay, so we use the full price again. So 500 times 30, so we get 15,000 here in credit side. Okay, and the difference will be the discount. So the discount will be taken from the forfeited shares. Okay, which is 3,000. You can calculate this manually by multiplying the discount, which is 6 times 500 shares. Okay, which is the discount. Okay, this is journal entry to reissue the shares in a discounted price. Okay, and lastly, on June, on June the 1st, the company refund the remaining balance of forfeited shares. Okay, so we simply have forfeited shares in the debit side and cash credit side. So initially forfeited shares balance is 11,000, and the company used 3,000 to give the discount to the new investors, right? So this discount. So remaining balance is 8,000. So 8,000 debit and credit. Okay, so it's pretty much the journal entry for number 1. I know it's quite rigid and maybe a bit confusing, but I think if you follow the logic and the steps of issuing the shares, you can follow the process, how we start with the application and then move to allotment and then call. So if some applicants did not pay the call money, the company withdraw the shares from them. Okay, and then reissue the shares in a discounted price. Okay, so number 2, Cheng company declared cash dividend $1 per share. So on July, they will record, when they declare this dividend, they will record retained earnings, debit, and dividend payable credit side. $1 times 10,000, we have 10,000 debit and credit. Okay, and then on September, when they pay this dividend, they will record dividend payable in the debit side. Okay, and cash credit side, because this is a cash dividend. Okay, so this will be 10,000 each. Okay, last one is number 3. this company engaged in a share buyback on December. Okay, so on December the 1st, we should record ordinary capital in the debit. Okay, so 500 shares times 30, so 15,000. Okay, and in cash credit for 15,000. Okay, so this is pretty much the answer for this question. Any comment or question on shareholders' equity? No? Okay, so let's move to the next one. Now we have the cash flow statement. So as we have discussed, we have two methods for operating cash flow. So the indirect method or direct method. The accounting standard suggests the company to use indirect method because the indirect method is more detailed in calculation, and so the readers can easily follow the calculation. Okay, but in reality, the company also use the direct method to check the accuracy of the calculation or the consistency of the calculation using the indirect method. Okay, so in reality they use both methods. Okay, so this is the flow if we use the indirect method for operating cash flow. So basically we start with the net profit. We take this net profit from the profit and loss. Okay, and then first we remove the effect of accruals. So any non-cash transactions should be added back to the profit. So we have depreciation, amortization in the past, but not anymore. Impairment, and then allowances and any other accruals. Okay, and then we remove the loss, the impact or loss or gain from disposal of non-current asset. Okay, because this loss or gain should not be part of the operating activities. Okay, so if we have a loss, we add back this loss to the net profit. If we have a gain, we remove the gain from the profit. Okay, and lastly, we identify what happened with the current asset and current liabilities. Okay, so hopefully you still remember the relationship between current asset and current liabilities with the cash. Okay, so if we have a decrease in current asset, we assume that the company is selling the current asset for cash. So a decrease in current asset means an addition in the operating cash flow. Okay, but in increase in current asset, it means we assume that the company is using the cash to purchase more current asset. So it should be a reduction in the operating cash flow. Okay, so the same relationship apply for current liabilities. Okay, so we have to identify these changes in the balance of current assets and current liabilities. Okay, next, the investing activities. For investing activities, we need to look at the balance of non-current asset. Okay, so any increase in current asset, it means that the company is using the cash to purchase more non-current assets. So be an addition, a reduction in the investing cash flows, and any reduction in the non-current asset balance, we assume that the company is selling the non-current asset for cash, then it should be a deduction in the investing activities. Okay, and then in financing activities, we need to check the balance of the capital, ordinary capital, and non-current liabilities. Okay, this is basically the two alternatives of financing the company's operation. Okay, so any increase in the ordinary share capital or non-current liabilities, we assume the company is issuing more shares or getting more loans for cash. So it should be an addition in the financing activities. And any decrease in the share ordinary capital or non-current liabilities, we assume the company is paying back the shares or repay their loans using the cash. Okay, so be a deduction in financing cash flow. And lastly, the dividend. So any dividend, any cash dividend should be a deduction in financing cash flow. Okay, so if we add these three cash flows, we get the net changes in cash, and we add the beginning balance of cash, we get the ending balance of cash. Okay, and next is the direct method. So in the direct method, we start with the cash collection from customers. So we have discussed that the most logical way to calculate this cash collection from customers is we use the account receivable cycle, which argue that the ending account receivable will be equal with the beginning account receivable plus the sales minus the cash collection. We simply rearrange this formula, we can calculate the cash received from customers. Okay, so this cash collection from customers will be deducted by cash payment for business operations. Okay, so we have cash payment for inventories. We can use the account payable cycle to calculate the total cash payment for inventories. Okay, so which argue that the ending account payable is equal with the beginning account payable plus any purchase minus the cash payment. So we can arrange this formula and get cash payment. Okay, but sometimes you don't have the purchase, so you have to manually calculate the purchase from the cost of goods sold. Okay, so you must know how we can calculate this purchase from cost of goods sold. Okay, and then cash payment for operations. So basically for these three groups, so we need to check the expenses and the corresponding account in the balance sheet, okay, in liabilities account. So let's say for interest, cash payment for interest, so we need to add the interest expense plus the changes in interest payable in the balance sheet. Okay, so always check the corresponding account in the balance sheet. Okay, so corresponding account in the balance sheet. Okay, so we got net cash flow from operation. Okay, so this investing and financing section will be the same with the previous one. Okay, so we have this question for cash flow statement. So we have Anos Apples Limited. Net profit is 200,000. Okay, and we have this information from the balance sheet. Okay, we don't have the ending balance of cash. Basically, we have to calculate this one. Okay, so we have to use the indirect method for operating cash flow. It means we will start with the net profit. So we have this net profit from the profit and loss. Next, we identify the accruals. So we should remove the effect of accruals. So we got this accumulated depreciation of equipment. So the ending balance is 150, the beginning balance is 160. So if you look at this balance, it's a little bit unusual, right? So because normally the balance should be increasing because we always have additional depreciation expense every year. Okay, so we should expect that this balance should be increasing rather than decreasing. Okay. So if you look at this, we need to look at in more detail what happened with this ending balance. So if we read the questions that the company is selling one equipment, cost 150,000 and depreciation of 50,000. So this is the problem. So this balance is taken out from this accumulated depreciation ending balance. So we need to add back this balance. So it should be plus 50,000. So the original ending balance of this accumulated depreciation is 200. Okay, so the one that we should include in the cash flow statement should be 40,000. Okay, so this is an increase in the accumulated depreciation. It means this is the depreciation expense for the current year. Okay, so we need to add back this to the operating cash flow. Okay, and next we need to identify whether we have a gain or loss from selling the non-current asset. So we have this one transaction. This equipment was sold for 115,000. So the gain is equal with 115,000 of selling price minus the book value. So the book value basically 150 minus 50. So the cost minus the accumulated depreciation. So basically 100. So the gain is 15,000. Okay, so we also have to remove this gain from the net profit. So we deduct this gain. Okay. Next, we identify what happened with the current asset and current liabilities. Okay. So first, we have inventory, which is current asset. You can see that the balance is declining. So declining balance of inventory means the company is selling the inventory for cash. So we have 10,000 should be an addition to the operating cash flow. Next, account payable, which is current liabilities. You can see that the balance of account payable is declining as well. So we assume the company repaying some of this account payable using their cash. So we should treat this as a deduction of operating cash flow. And revenue is also current liabilities. You can see the balance also declining by 3,000. Okay, so we should treat this as a deduction as well for deduction of net profit. Oh, sorry, operating cash flow. Okay, and lastly, we have prepaid insurance. So prepaid insurance is current asset. Okay, you can see the balance is declining. Okay, so 15,000. So this should be an addition to the operating cash flow. Okay, so that's pretty much everything that we should include in the operating cash flow. So I have prepared the full format of this cash flow statement. So we have this depreciation expense, accruals, and then less gain from sale of non-current asset, decrease in inventory, decrease in prepaid insurance, and decrease in account payable, and decrease in unearned revenue. So we will get this 232,000 net cash flow from operating activities. Okay, next is the investing activities. So we need to check what happened with the non-current asset account. So you can see that we have two non-current asset or PPE, goodwill and equipment. So goodwill account is increasing, okay, by 50,000. So it means the company is purchasing a new company, other company. That's why they have goodwill. So it should be a deduction of investing cash flow. Equipment is declining. Okay, this should be an addition to the investing cash flow. And we, instead of using these differences, we already know the actual amount of the additional cost of this sale of equipment, which is 115,000. So we should use 115,000. Okay, so this should be included in this cash flow from investing activities. Okay, and then last one is the financing. We need to look at the non-current liabilities, which is this one. Okay, we can see that the balance is declining. It means the company used some of their cash to repay the loan. Okay, so this would be a deduction in the investing cash flow, in the financing cash flow. Okay, just this one. So we just add these three groups. So 232 plus 65 plus 50. We got net changes in cash for 247. We add with the beginning balance, we get 267,000 of ending balance of cash. So this is Basically 267,000. Okay. Any comment or questions on cash flow statement? No? Okay. So yeah, hopefully, I know it's a bit complicated, but if you practice more and get the logic of the relationship between equity, liabilities, and non-cash asset with the cash, you can identify what will be the effect to cash of from these changes in the balance of each account. Okay, so you can identify whether we need to add or deduct the cash because of these changes. Okay, so let's move to the last topic. So this is the financial statement analysis. We have discussed this last week. So basically we covered 3 types of ratios. So we have liquidity ratios, which capture the short-term ability of company to repay their liabilities. Okay, so we have current ratio, quick ratio, receivable turnover, inventory turnover. And then we have a solvency ratio. It's basically more longer term pictures of the liquidity ratios. Okay, so this ratio capture long-term ability of company to repay their liabilities. Okay, we have debt to equity ratio, debt to asset ratio, and time interest earned. And lastly, we have profitability ratio, which capture how effective the company use their asset and to generate profit. Okay, so we have profit margin, return on equity ratio, return on asset ratio, earning per share, and price earning ratio. I think the last one is the most popular ratio. Okay, so the price to earning ratio. Okay, we have this question. So this is a Priscilla Spice question. Okay, and we have information from 2015 to 2017. Okay, and we have to calculate the ratios of these 3 groups. So I already calculate this ratio to make calculation easier. So I think this is a typo. This one should be 2017, 2016. Okay, so this is the formula. So you basically can follow the formula to get this ratio. Okay, so calculating the ratio is one thing, but the other thing that you have to learn is how to interpret these numbers. Okay, how to give some context or meanings to these numbers. Okay, which is you need to know the environment which is the company is operating, and also some business knowledge or what happened with this ratio number. So what this number tell us, okay, about the company's performance. Okay, so I think you can practice calculating these ratios, okay, using the equations. Okay, any comment or question on financial statement analysis? No? Okay, so yeah, it's basically all. So lastly, I just have some reminders. So we don't have tutorial next week because next week will be your study vacation week. So you can have a break a little bit. Okay, but you have to start doing your MyBee assignment. Okay, so the MyBee assignment will due on September 23rd, I think, by midnight of September 23rd. Okay, so you can find some information about this assignment at the UTIS online under the assignment and MyBee assignment. Okay, most importantly, you must check your case, allocated case for this assignment. Okay, so make sure you do the correct case. Okay, and you need to submit at least 6 reports from your assignment. So you need to submit the balance sheet, profit and loss statement, cash receipt journal, cash payment journal, and receivables and payables reconciliation. Okay, so I already emailed you the Microsoft Form links to submit this assignment. Okay, just make sure that you use the correct link. Okay, to submit this assignment. Okay, I think that's all. Yeah, another thing is that today is the Are You Okay day. So hopefully you are okay with the subject. So, but if you're not okay, if you have some anxieties, you can contact me or contact Nelson. So to discuss what is your problem, we'll do our best to help you. You can also contact the UTS counseling to discuss what was your problem. Okay, and they will also help you. And lastly, if you're interested to take accounting as your major in your degree, you can attend these information sessions. Okay, so Amanda and Nelson will share what will you learn in the accounting majors. Okay, and the prospect of this future prospect of this degree. Okay, and also some third-year student will also join this panel. Okay, so hopefully this will be beneficial for you if you're interested to take accounting as your major. Okay, that's pretty much all. Any comment or question before we finish the tutorial? Okay, no? Okay, so yeah, we can finish the tutorial. I'll send you a slide and video as soon as possible. Okay, so see you in a couple of weeks. So have a break and start thinking about your Miami assignment. Okay, so see you.